They say that in the quiet, rolling hills of Tennessee, when the night grows cold and the wind whispers through the trees, you can still hear her voice. Some call her a ghost. Others claim she was something far, far worse. But to one family in the early 1800s, she was a living nightmare they could not escape. This is the chilling, true story of the Bell Witch, one of the most terrifying and well-documented hauntings in American history. Our story begins in 1804. A man named John Bell moved his wife, Lucy, and their children to a sprawling farm in Adams, Tennessee, right near the Red River. For more than a decade, the Bell family lived a peaceful, hard-working life. They were respected members of the community, building a home and a future on their land. But in the summer of 1817, everything changed forever. One evening, as John was walking through his cornfield, he spotted a bizarre creature lurking in the rows. He described it as having the body of a large dog but the head of a rabbit, and it stared at him with unsettling, glowing eyes. Startled, John raised his gun and fired a shot, but when the smoke cleared, the creature had vanished without a trace. That very night, the terror began. It started with a faint knocking on the outside walls of the house. Soft at first, then growing louder, more insistent, as if someone was methodically circling the cabin, striking each wall in turn. John rushed outside with a lantern, his heart pounding, but found nothing. The yard was empty. Night after night, the knocking returned. Then came other sounds, the heavy clanking of chains being dragged across the wooden floors, the sickening gnaw of rats on the bedposts, and faint, indecipherable whispers that seemed to come from the darkest corners of the rooms. The family searched every inch of their home, but they could find no logical explanation. Soon, the unseen entity grew bolder. The children would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, their bed covers ripped from their bodies by an invisible force. Pillows were hurled across the room, and most terrifyingly, an unseen hand began to slap and pinch John's youngest daughter, Betsy Bell, leaving red welts on her face. At first, John tried to keep the haunting a secret. He was a practical man, and he feared what his neighbors might think. He worried they'd see his family as cursed or worse, crazy. But the strange events only intensified. The whispers in the dark slowly formed into a woman's voice, clear, intelligent, and malicious. She would quote scripture perfectly, then sing bawdy tavern songs. She could answer questions, revealing secrets about the family that no one outside the home should know. They could never see her, but they could hear her voice as if she were standing right beside them. Word eventually spread throughout the community. Neighbors, skeptical but curious, came to the Bell farm to witness the haunting for themselves. The voice spoke to them too. It introduced itself as Kate, claiming to be the spirit of a woman named Kate Batts, a former neighbor who believed John Bell had cheated her in a land deal years ago. She declared with chilling certainty that she had returned for one purpose: to kill John Bell and torment his family until her vengeance was complete. From that moment on, the invisible entity was known as the Bell Witch. The witch's torment focused mercilessly on young Betsy Bell. She was scratched, pinched, and slapped by unseen hands, often in front of multiple witnesses who watched in horror as red marks and handprints appeared on her skin out of thin air. Her hair was pulled, her shoes were thrown into the fire, and she was tormented relentlessly. The witch followed Betsy everywhere, to school, into the woods, and through the fields, whispering threats and insults in her ear. The story of the Bell Witch became a legend in its own time. People traveled for hundreds of miles to visit the farm and hear the mysterious voice for themselves. This is what separates the Bell Witch from so many other ghost stories. This wasn't a tale told in hushed tones by a single, unreliable narrator. This was a phenomenon witnessed by an entire community. Friends, neighbors, clergymen, and even total strangers all reported hearing the disembodied voice and seeing objects move on their own. The Bell Witch could mimic the voices of people miles away, predict future events with eerie accuracy, and expose the deepest secrets of visitors, often to their great embarrassment. Perhaps the most famous visitor to the Bell farm was a man who would later become the 7th President of the United States, General Andrew Jackson. Intrigued by the widespread accounts, Jackson decided to investigate for himself, traveling to the farm with a group of his men and a self-proclaimed witch tamer. As their wagon approached the property, the horses suddenly stopped dead in their tracks. They strained and pulled, but the wagon wouldn't budge, as if held by an immense unseen force. After several frustrating minutes, a disembodied female voice was heard laughing from the woods, saying, "All right, General, let the wagon move. I'll see you again tonight." Instantly, the horses moved forward as if nothing had happened. That night, Jackson and his men set up camp in the Bell home, ready to confront the spirit. The witch tamer boasted he had a silver bullet that could silence any entity. But the Bell witch turned the tables on him. He began to scream, claiming he was being stuck with pins and beaten by an invisible force. He fled the house in terror and was never seen on the farm again. Jackson and his men were tormented all night with terrifying sounds and physical assaults. The next morning, a shaken Andrew Jackson reportedly declared, "I would rather fight the entire British army than spend another night with the Bell Witch." He and his men left immediately. While the witch entertained visitors, she never lost sight of her primary goal. John Bell's health began to rapidly decline. He suffered from strange fits that left him unable to speak, his tongue feeling swollen and numb. He had spells of twitching and choking, and he complained of sharp, stabbing pains. All the while, the witch mocked him relentlessly, calling him Old Jack and celebrating his suffering, vowing that she would be the death of him. In December of 1820, after a prolonged and agonizing illness, John Bell was found dead in his bed. Beside him on the nightstand was a small, mysterious vial containing a dark, unfamiliar liquid. The family was suspicious. When they tested a single drop of the liquid on the family cat, the animal died almost instantly. At that moment, the Bell Witch's voice filled the room with triumphant, horrifying laughter. She shrieked, "I gave Old Jack a big dose of that last night. It got him. He'll never get up from that bed again." The witch's cruelty didn't even end with his death. During John Bell's funeral, as mourners paid their respects, they were shocked to hear loud, joyous singing coming from the direction of the graveyard. It was the Bell Witch, belting out drinking songs as John's body was lowered into the ground. As the funeral party walked away, her mocking laughter echoed through the trees. After John Bell's death, the haunting began to subside. In 1821, the Bell Witch announced that she would be leaving the family, but promised she would return in 7 years. True to her word, strange activity was reported on the farm again in 1828, but it was far less intense and eventually faded away completely. To this day, the area around the original Bell farm is said to be haunted. A nearby cave, now known as the Bell Witch Cave, is believed by many to be a center of paranormal activity. Visitors report hearing disembodied whispers, phantom footsteps, and even the ghostly laughter of a woman echoing from the darkness within. The story of the Bell Witch stands out in American folklore because it is not just a ghost story. It's a historical account backed by dozens of eyewitnesses, including a future president. For over 200 years, it has been passed down through generations, fueling books, plays, and movies. Was the Bell Witch truly the vengeful spirit of Kate Batts? Was it a poltergeist? A clever and elaborate hoax perpetrated by the family? Or was it something else entirely? Something older and far more sinister? No one can say for sure, but her legend lives on, forever etched into the history of Tennessee. And if you ever find yourself near Adams on a quiet, moonless night, listen closely to the wind. You might just hear a whisper in the dark. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more strange and chilling stories. We'll see you next time.